Yeah, what up? Welcome in. It is the Nail in the Coffin podcast. I'm your host, Drayson Ball. Thanks so much for joining me today. On today's show, the updated power rankings for the first week of September as we're nearing the playoffs. And also, it's the final week of my NFL playoff predictions. It's all coming up on today's edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. Let's not waste any time and jump right into my updated MLB power rankings, starting off with the honorable mention. And I know this team is not going to make the playoffs. I get it. But the Tampa Bay Rays, they got to be an honorable mention for this week in my power rankings for the first week of September for the MLB season. We're right around the corner from the playoffs. 25 games or so, and we will be in the hot stove league, which is the MLB playoffs. But the Tampa Bay Rays have got to be an honorable mention. I get it. They're not going to make the playoffs. That's why they're not in my top 10. But they got to be an honorable mention. 8 wins in their last 10 games, including 3 in a row. They're just playing really well right now. Again, not going to make the playoffs in that division or in the wild card, but playing good ball. And coming in at number 10 is the Milwaukee Brewers. And I put the Brewers in just basically because the other teams that could have potentially filled this spot didn't have a great week of baseball. I'm talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm talking about the Seattle Mariners. Those types of teams. So the Brewers almost get it by default, but let's not take that as an insult. They haven't been playing great baseball as of late. They just aren't playing well enough, I guess we'll say. Currently 78 and 61. Good for second best record in the National League. But they are trailing the Cubs by 4 games. You know, they've began to pull away. Have the Cubs. The thing that I don't love about Milwaukee right now, or the thing that I do love, maybe one of the two, I don't know, however you want to slice it up, but they do play the Cubs and the Cardinals 8 more times, including today, which is Tuesday. They do play the Cubs 8 more times, Cubs and the Cardinals 8 more times. So they do kind of control their fate in that regard. They don't control their fate other than if they win those games. Obviously, they will. But that's a tall order. They got to win most of those games. Let's not forget the Cardinals, without counting the last few days, have played really well in the last couple of weeks. Now they've sputtered the last couple of days. They've lost 3 in a row and lost 5 out of the last 10. But we know they can get hot. And if you're the Milwaukee Brewers, you got to win a lot of those games to even have a chance to win the division, although they are currently right now in the wild card spot. At number 9, the Cleveland Indians. And sadly for the Indians, they just keep falling lower and lower on my board. I think I had them at 7 last week or 8 last week. I had them 6 the week before. They just keep falling lower and lower on my board. And, you know, the only thing I can really say about the Indians is they're just okay. They're just okay. I don't see them making a whole lot of noise in the playoffs. They play in a dumpster fire of a division. The American League Central is absolute garbage. Hot garbage. I mean, when we'll get to this in a minute, when you look at the National League West, for example, and how just unbelievably good that division is, and you compare it to the American League Central, it's bad. It's just really, really bad. I mean, the Minnesota Twins are in second place in that division, and they're 11 games under 500. I mean, it's just bad. That's all I can really say about the Cleveland Indians. They're just okay, and I don't see them making any noise in the playoffs. At number 8 is my Atlanta Braves. Down one spot or one or two spots from last week. I had a premonition. They're playing the Red Sox right now, and I'll get to that when I get to the Red Sox. I had a premonition about the Braves, and I like the Braves, but they have let's be honest, they have gotten really, really fortunate in their division, especially the last couple of weeks. The Philadelphia Phillies, who are the second place team, have won 3 out of their last 10. And they just got really, really fortunate. In order for them to be in first place by 4 games, they've gotten pretty fortunate. They have played a pretty good ball, but I don't know if they've been playing really good ball going into the playoffs. That does concern me a little bit with the Braves, is they're not playing their best ball right now. Now, there's still 20-25 games or so left in the season, so there's plenty of time to, pick it back up. But they're not playing their best ball right now. They have a tough schedule down the stretch, one of the toughest in baseball. But the key thing for them, even considering their tough schedule, is they do play Philadelphia 7 times in their last 10 games. 7 times in the last 10 games they play Philadelphia. So they really do control their own destiny. And if they beat up on the Phillies in the last 2 weeks of the season, they'll win the division and they'll be in the playoffs. At number 7 is the Colorado Rockies, making a big jump from last week. They were at 10 last week. I bumped them up a few spots because they're in first place. They are in first place in that American League West. Excuse me, that National League West. Why am I getting confused with my American League and my National League? What's up with me today? I keep saying the wrong league every time. I don't know what's up with me today. The National League West. The Colorado Rockies are in first place in that division. I mean, who would have thought 137 games into the season, the Rockies would hold the outright lead in the National League West? I certainly didn't. Now, I thought the Rockies would be good. I thought they might sneak into the playoffs, but I didn't see them leading this division 137 games in. I didn't. Not with the team that the Dodgers put on the field this season. And I'll get to the Dodgers in just a second. But good for Colorado. Now, they do have a tough schedule down the stretch. A really, really tough schedule down the stretch. And I feel like that will be their downfall. That will be their downfall. Now, we'll see if they sneak into a wild card spot, but I just don't see them winning the division. And I'll tell you why after I announce my next team. At number 6 is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yes, they weren't even on my list last week. Weren't even an honorable mention last week. They didn't deserve it. But guess what? They've won 8 out of their last 10 games. And they are on fire. They're on fire. And they've got to be at least number 6 on this list. I could have put them higher, but I can't just overreact to the last week of ball games. They have a tremendous roster with great pitching. Honestly, this is where I thought the Dodgers. This is how I thought the Dodgers would be playing all season. I thought they would be easily in first place in the National League West, and I thought they would have the best record or one of the best records in the National League this season. That obviously hasn't panned out, although they are have one of the better records. They're 3rd or 4th or 5th, maybe right around there, as far as records in the National League goes. But I didn't see them being at this point. Now, that being said, they made some moves at the deadline. They made some moves a couple days ago before the August 31st waiver deadline, and I think they are playing the best ball they've played all season. Obviously, that's without a doubt. And I like their remaining schedule more than I like the Rockies and the Diamondbacks' remaining schedules. And here's my prediction. I have a prediction that you can write in your calendars, you can book it. This division will be decided on September 20th. Or by December 20th. You can book it. It will be decided on September 20th. The morning of September 20th, you can wake up, and whoever's in first place, that will be who the division winner is. Because that is when everything kind of wraps up as far as the division play with the Dodgers, the Rockies, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is just a fascinating division. This race is one of the better races, if not the best race in all of baseball right now. It just is. The Dodgers schedule, they play 2 more with the Mets tonight, but then they had to go on the road to the Rockies this weekend, and then they play the Rockies again at home the 17th, 18th, and 19th of September. Other than that, they play the Reds, and they play the Padres, and they play San Francisco. And I think their schedule is a little bit easier going forward compared to the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks schedule is brutal. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. They got to play the Braves 4 times. They got to play the Rockies 6 times. They've got to play the Cubs 3 times. They've got to play the Astros 3 times. It's brutal. And the Rockies isn't a whole lot better. They've got to play the Dodgers, the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks 4 times. And, the Diamondbacks 7 times and the Dodgers 7 times, along with the Phillies and the Nationals. So you can book it in your calendars, September 20th. When you wake up on September 20th, check your app, your MLB app or your ESPN app, whatever you use, and whoever's in the lead in the National League West on September 20th, book it. That will be who wins that division. Los Angeles Dodgers at 6. And at number 5, the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Athletics. What am I saying? The Oakland Athletics are number 5 on my MLB power rankings. Look, they're still playing good ball. They've kind of gone under the radar for the last week or so. They made that big run 2 or 3 weeks and took over the division, but they've cooled off a little bit, but they're still playing good ball. They're still in second place in the American League West. Excuse me, the American League West. And Houston's just better. Let's just plain and simple. Houston is just better. They still hold on to a wild card spot. They're pretty cemented in that spot. 5.5 games in the wild card. So unless they collapse and the Mariners make a big push late in the season, they will get into the playoffs in that wild card spot. But look at that matchup, who they'd face in that wild card game, and it'd be the Yankees. That would be a very tough 1-game playoff against the mighty Yankees. And at number 4, the Chicago Cubs. I mentioned earlier, they're starting to pull away in that division. They are 4 games removed from the Brewers and 5.5 removed from the Cardinals. And, they're just tremendous. I mentioned it before in this podcast. They're tremendous at home. They've got the best record in the National League, and they're on pace to have home field advantage throughout the NL playoffs. They're just playing really good right now, and they're playing really consistent. That's what I like about them. They've got a great roster. They've got a good pitching staff, and they're the best team in the National League right now. That's what I like about them. Pretty simple. At number 3, the Chicago Cubs were number 4, and at number 3, the New York Yankees. They're not going to catch the Red Sox. They're not. They're 8.5 back of the Red Sox in that division, but they're still one of the best teams in baseball. Let's not lie. And they just added Andrew McCutchen. I mean, that's a huge pickup. Just a few days ago, a huge pickup for them. Although I'm not quite sure where he's going to play in their outfield. I mean, they've got Giancarlo Stanton, and they've got Aaron Judge, and they've got, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic there with McCutchen in their outfield. But, I mean, he's a tremendous pickup, at any point in the season, let alone, in deep into a playoff run. And he could certainly help against that juggernaut of pitching that the Red Sox have. So I like the pickup for the Yankees, and I think they're going to be really, really good down the stretch. At number 2, the Houston Astros. They had a great week. They had a really tremendous week. They're on a currently 3-game win streak. They won 7 out of the last 10. And I just really like their roster, and I really like the way that they play. Obviously, they're the reigning World Series champions, so that's got to give a big boost to those veterans down the stretch, knowing how to win tough games late in the season and into the postseason. I really like that aspect about the Astros. Their last, the schedule that they have is unbelievably easy. They have 9 of their 22 games that they have left are against teams that are over 500. Only 9. Only 9 games against teams over 500 remaining on their schedule. And I really think they are going to cruise to winning this division. And at number 1, playing King of the Hill, but they are the only Kings right now in the major leagues, is the Boston Red Sox. And here's the kind of revelation or premonition I mentioned earlier when talking about the Braves. They're playing the Braves. They're playing the Braves right now, and they beat up on them yesterday. And here's the premonition I had in that game yesterday. I don't want to get too much into it, but in the game yesterday, the Braves loaded the bases in like the first inning, in the fourth inning, in like the 7th inning or something like that, the 8th inning maybe, and they could not get a base hit. The Braves, they got a sacrifice fly once, and then they grounded out and got a force out at home, and then like a pop fly, and they just could not score runs. And again, these were bases loaded, 1 out, bases loaded, nobody out, bases loaded, prime positions to score 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 runs maybe, and they could not get a base hit. And then the Red Sox, who are a much better team than the Braves, loaded the bases once, I believe, in the 6th inning, maybe the 7th inning. And they just got hit after hit after hit with the bases loaded, and they ended up scoring 8 runs. And my premonition was that the Red Sox are just a championship team. I mean, that's just it. They're just a championship team. And the Braves are a playoff team. That's the difference. The Braves are a playoff team, and the Red Sox are a championship team. And that's the biggest difference between the Red Sox and the Braves, and quite frankly, the Red Sox and a lot of other of the teams on this list. Now, I do think they have some competition in the American League because it's loaded. The Astros, the Yankees, even in the Athletics, it's just a loaded American League this year. But I do think they have a championship team. So there it is. Those are my updated MLB power rankings. Quickly, just to recap my honorable mention, the Tampa Bay Rays at number 10, the Milwaukee Brewers, number 9, Cleveland Indians, number 8, the Atlanta Braves, number 7, the Colorado Rockies, number 6, the Los Angeles Dodgers, number 5, the Oakland Athletics, number 4, the Chicago Cubs, 3, New York Yankees, number 2, the Houston Astros, and number 1, the Boston Red Sox. Quickly transitioning into my second to last NFL, I guess I said in the opening playoff predictions. I guess they are my playoff predictions, but they more are my season predictions for the NFL. I've done the AFC and NFC North, East, and South, and today I finish up my AFC picks, and then later on in the week I'll get to my NFC picks of the NFC and AFC West. So today we'll do the AFC West, and here is how I see this division playing out. I see the Chargers winning this division at 11-5. The Chargers will win this division at 11-5, and they will be third in the AFC playoff picture, behind the Steelers at number 1 and the Patriots at number 2. Look, they have improved in many aspects of their team in the offseason. They've improved at wide receiver. They've improved in the offensive line. They've added Mike Pouncey, a Pro Bowl center. They've gotten better in the secondary. Got a steal in Derwin James at the draft. So they've improved, their defense. They've improved their offense. They've improved all over the field. And the thing with the Chargers in the last few seasons, is they've just gotten plagued by injuries. Like, they've just gotten unbelievably bad luck with injuries the last 2 or 3 seasons. Even this year, Hunter Henry, their starting tight end, went down with an ACL tear. Now, they brought back my boy Antonio Gates, but I don't know what he has left. So if they can avoid major injuries this year, I think they'll be great. Last year they would have won 11 or 12 games if they would have had a kicker. Let's not forget they lost 2 or 3 or 4 early season games just because they couldn't make a field goal at the end of the game. So they were tremendous the last 2 months. They only lost, I think, 1 game in the last 2 months of the season. So they finish on a tear, and I think they'll pick up right where they left off. I like their schedule. I really do. I think it could. I think if they could open up the door, the schedule could open up the door for them winning 12 or even 13 games potentially. I do think their schedule is favorable in that regard. They do have only a couple, 2 or 3, 2.5 road games that are kind of tough. The Rams and the Steelers obviously are tough. The Seahawks are tough. I don't really know what I think about the Seahawks yet. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. Obviously, it's difficult to play in Seattle, but I don't really know what the Seahawks are going to be this season. So we'll call it 2.5 tough road games. But and then the other thing is, if you don't count their division matchups with the Chiefs, they only have 4 games against playoff teams from last year. Only 4 games against playoff teams from last year. The Rams, the Steelers, the Titans, and the Bills. And we're counting the Bills and the Titans, but no one thinks they're going to be playoff teams this year. So really, the only legit playoff teams from last year they play are the Rams and the Steelers. So I really like their schedule. And I think they will win the AFC West. In second, however, are the Kansas City Chiefs. And look, the Chiefs are a really interesting team to me this season. They still have a very, very good roster. I like their roster all around. They've got a really good roster, but the question marks that I have with the Chiefs reside in Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, I'm going to call him a first-year quarterback. I know that he's not a rookie, but he did sit behind Alex Smith for a year. He did start the last game of the season, and I get it. He's not a really true first-year quarterback, but for all intents and purposes, he's a first-year quarterback. I've not seen him play, really. I don't really know what he is. I think he can be good. I think he will be good. But obviously with a first-year quarterback, there are ups and downs. It's kind of a roller coaster season, figuring out, what, who he is and what he can do and how to, when to open up the playbook to him, what he can handle and all that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of a roller coaster season for first-year quarterbacks. And again, I think he'll be good down the road, but what will we get from him in this first season as a full-time starter? If he hits out of the park, if he comes in and does, like a Dak Prescott maybe, or even a Deshaun Watson last season, I think they could win this division. Let's not kid ourselves. They could win this division if Mahomes is just a home run hitter out the gate. And I think he will be a very good player down the line. I just don't know what I'm going to get from him this season. Their schedule's not terrible, but the first 6 weeks are tough, are really, really tough. They start the first 2 weeks of the season at the Chargers, at the Steelers, and then they host the 49ers. They go on the road to the Broncos, they host the Jags, and then they go on the road to the Patriots. So the first 6 weeks could be 3-3, could be 2-5, or 2-4, could be, it's going to be very tough to win games in the first 6 weeks of the season. After that, it does lighten up a little. It does lighten up a little bit after that. But they have their bye in week 12, which is a very late bye week. I typically like my teams to have their bye weeks around 7, 8, 9, even 10 at the latest. So 12 is a little later than I usually like my teams to have when evaluating schedules. It has its pros and cons, obviously, but if they're too banged up by then, they do have some winnable games in the final 5 weeks. But if they're not already too banged up by week 12, they could finish the season on a 4-game, 5-game win streak, perhaps. So I have them at 9-7, like I mentioned, and I have them at a wild card spot. Third place team will be the Denver Broncos. I think they'll be 7-9. They'll be in the hunt for a playoff spot, but I do think they will miss out. Their defense is good, but I don't know that it is what it used to be. Case Keenum, they picked up Case Keenum, and I like Case Keenum, but I just think he's a backup quarterback. I think he had a tremendous year last season when everything went his way. He had a loaded offense. He had a good defense. He had a good offensive coordinator. He just had a really good situation in which he could thrive, and he did. And I'm not saying that Denver is not all those things. Although I don't love their personnel, I just think he will regress to the mean. And I think, like I said, he's proven over the years that he's a backup quarterback. And I think once we see him play this year, I think people will remember that. I like their schedule. I think I like it the best out of the division, to be honest. Like I said, I just don't know that I love their personnel as much in this division. They get a lot of their tougher games at home. The Steelers and the Rams, the Texans at home as well. But they do have a little bit of a tougher schedule after the bye week. They play the Chargers, the Steelers, the 49ers, the Chargers again, on the road to the Raiders, which who knows what we're going to get from the Raiders this season. So a couple of tough games there after their bye week. And I just think that will kind of keep them out of the playoffs. A few tough games there down the stretch. And I just don't know what they will have as far as personnel, mostly on the offense, with Case Keenum at the helm. And finally, the Oakland Raiders. I knew I was going to talk about the Oakland Raiders, and that's why I mentioned the Oakland Raiders earlier when I was trying to say the Oakland Athletics. So the Oakland Raiders at 5-11, I think they will be. I kind of think they're in rebuild mode. And I don't think they want to admit it to themselves. They just shipped Khalil Mack out of town, and I have my concerns about John Gruden. I mentioned this in my last episode about the top 5 storylines going into the NFL season. If you want to check out that video, links in the description. But I have my concerns about John Gruden. And obviously they just shipped their defensive stud out of town, Khalil Mack. And I think other than Derek Carr, I don't love their offense. And now without Mack, I don't love their defense really either, I just don't think they have the players to compete in this division. Their starting running back is Marshawn Lynch, still. So I just don't know what I'm going to get from them offensively or defensively for that matter. And I think John Gruden's first year back will be kind of just like a first year coach trying to get the hang of things. I kind of think they're, like I said, in rebuild mode, and they just don't want to admit it to themselves. Their schedule's tough, really, really tough. There aren't a lot of winnable games in the final 10 weeks of the season. I just don't see them overcoming a lot, all their deficiencies in the final 10 weeks of the season to be able to win a lot of games. And that's kind of just what I think about the Raiders. I just don't, like I said, I just don't see them overcoming this roster, especially in a tough division like the AFC West. I just don't see them winning a lot of games in this division. So just to recap, Chargers will win the division at 11-5. The Chiefs will be in a wild card spot at 9-7. The Broncos at 7-9 will be in the hunt, and the Raiders at 5-11 will be out of the playoffs. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. On the next episode on Friday, I will be finalizing my NFL predictions as far as the season goes. I will finish with the NFC West. Make sure you tune in this coming Friday, for my final NFL prediction. That's going to do it for today's show. Make sure to like this video and subscribe down below to never miss out on a future video, and I'll see you later.